Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. And for those of you who are here for the first time, my show is about celebrating artists and their body of worth. What makes a great artist? How do they get from point A to point B and beyond? And I am so excited about today's guest. We are going to be sitting down and chatting with Rutanya Alda. Now, of course, the book is the Mommie Dearest Diary, Carol Ann Tells All. But there's a lot more to her than Carol Ann. And we're going to explore the ins and outs of what makes a great career. How did she get from point A to point B and beyond? And I am telling you, reading this book, Rutanya, you are an amazing, amazing, amazing person. This book should not only be in the memoir sections of bookstores, this book should be in the self-help section of bookstores, because you have overcome some of the biggest obstacles that those of us who can only imagine what you've gone through can't even touch the hem of your skirt. And I am so thrilled that you said yes to me and that you're here today. Before we begin looking back, I want to look at where you are right now. We are, of course, in the midst of a pandemic. Today marks 389 days since our theaters shut down. And I want to ask, how are you doing really in the midst of this crazy time we're in right now?
Hi, Richard. Well, every time I see your face, it just makes me smile. I got to tell you that. No, you just exude happiness, and it makes me. I just feel good. So I want to say that to you first. And
Thank you so much.
You have the best hair ever. Oh. so getting back to your question, it's always two sides to things. In a way, this has been the most creative time for me personally, because I wrote my film and I filmed it with the help of my great friend Leon Jusen, who's a great animator, Scooby-Doo, Little Mermaid, all of those things. He's a really good friend. And what I realized is, more than ever, I had realized it once before, and that's what brought about the movie, is that life is temporary. It's so temporary. And I thought, about making my film. I said, if not now, when? When? Because life is not guaranteed. 1 minute, the next minute, it's gone, or something horrible happens. So I said, well, let me do this. So I worked on August, September, October, November, December on my script. It's a one-woman show. But it's not a one-woman show in the sense that it's just me. It's Leon with his imagination, his shadow work, his animated circus, and animated things, and photographs, and all kinds of. So it's a combination, eclectic kind of thing where a lot of people involved. And then, I said to myself, I don't know. I mean, I've never made a movie before. How can I make a movie? All those thoughts come. But then Leon came aboard. Two of my DPs came aboard. So really, with a 3-man crew, we shot this film, 17 hours of it.
Wow.
And then I thought, well, how are we going to get somebody to edit all this 17 hours? What are we going to do? I really honestly turned to Spirit. I just said, please help me. Just help me.
Mm-hmm.
Help me tell this story, which is not a story that World War II stories have been told. Wonderful movies. Great movies, Patton and all those other movies. But what our story is, like, when World War II ends, this story begins. This is a story that's not usually told after what happens. And then we got the wonderful David Ray, the great editor of Scarface and so many other movies, to edit our film because he loves the story. So he's editing now. He just started last week. So by the end of the week, we should have like a little edit, so we can know where to put insert things like Leon's animation, shadow work, pictures, things like that. So in a sense, that has been a great achievement for me that I never thought I was capable of. And then you rise to things you don't think you're capable. And then the Spirit helps you, the Lord somewhere helps you in your path. So in that sense, it's been wonderful. In the other sense is it's very hard to be separated from people, especially me.
Me too. Absolutely. I want to ask you, I mean, and I'm glad you bring up the Spirit. Have you always been a religious person, or do you consider yourself more spiritual? And where did that come from? Again, my hope is that everybody who watches this show will order your book, because it's not just about Mommie Dearest. The title refers to that, but your childhood is, I learned things about immigrants coming to this country that I never knew until I read your book. There were so many elements, which I'll talk about in a few moments, but going back to that point, has that spirit always been there?
Well, thank you for mentioning that part of the book, because that is the movie, but more, much more detail. I had a very out-of-body spiritual experience when I was in the refugee camps. And I was in the back of a truck with a lot of other sick kids.
I'm sorry.
And I said, I want to be truthful. And I said to God, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be in this lifetime. I was like 7, 8 years old. I don't want to be here anymore. So all of a sudden, I was pulled out of the universe. I was literally shot out from my body, shot out into the universe. I circled the Earth like that. It went into another galaxy like that. I flew around. I circled galaxies. I flew into another galaxy, and I became one with all the energy that ever was. I was one. I felt it. I felt I was one. I was perfect. I was a perfect being. And then, just as I was enjoying the whole thing, I was dropped back into the back of the truck with all the other sick kids. And that never left me, Richard. That never left me, that experience. I knew I was greater than me. Excuse me.
That's wonderful. Well, but your family did make it to America. You were sponsored by the Presbyterian Church. And I didn't, this is how naive I was, Rutanya. And I studied history and everything, that you had to be sponsored to come here, and that you had to pretty much have jobs lined up so that you were not a burden of the United States. Your family went to Chicago and then to Flagstaff, Arizona. What was it like for you, this little girl in a completely different country? English, hard to believe, everyone, was not your first language. But I love the fact that you learned to speak English by spending all day at the movies.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, that aspect of I just, when I was a little boy, I grew up in South Carolina, far, far from what you went through. But I used to sit in the movie theater, and I used to say, someday I'm going to be up there on that. I'm going to be up there. The theater is now a live theater, and I've gone back and performed on that stage where I used to sit there and look up.
Wonderful.
So, but you used to spend all day at the movies. These stories with your mom were just, heartbreaking. But you survived it. You got through it.
I did get through it. And I think a lot of it is that I am not a religious person, because I felt religion scared me. I was a sinner. I was bad. I was this. I was that. Oh, I'm sitting there. So I always believed in a higher power.
Mm-hmm.
You call it God, spirit, whatever, universal truth, universal life. I knew there was something greater than me. I always knew there was something greater than me because of my experience. And then I had another near-death experience. That's where my movie starts out, because the movie forced me to look at my childhood, which I kind of really pushed aside, and my separation from my father, which I didn't see. He was sent to the gulags, which I didn't see him meeting for 23 years. That was a big, huge loss in my life. It was a tremendous loss. It was a big hole that it took years to even patch up. But I always thought there was something greater, and that's sort of what kept me going, is that through everything, all the crap.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and it may or may not seem like a silly question to you, but do you feel that as an actress and being able to walk in the shoes of other human beings, that it gives you, almost on a spiritual level as well, a chance to experience life through the eyes of others?
Yes. And I honor that. That's why I never judge people, because I don't know what they've been through.
Absolutely.
And believe me, you don't know. They don't, Indian saying, but other sayings is, you never know until you walk in somebody's moccasins or somebody's shoes. I have a real empathy for people, and I understand. Try to understand. I try to understand, because if I'm to play a person that you consider a bad person, nobody considers themselves a bad person.
That's true.
They are doing the best they can in life, and who knows what the circumstances are that brought them to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try to see the life through that person's eyes. And so I no matter what, I try to love my character, because that is about, I don't like it when people make judgments about people and they put you down because you think this way, or you feel this way, or you live this way, or you're poor, or what, and they look down upon. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing I don't tolerate. I don't like it. I think it has a sense of superiority about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at you, and I look at your beautiful face, and I can't imagine everything you've been through, but here you are, this radiant being, talking to me. And it's like, if I had to play you or someone like you, that's what I would really explore. Because
I think it's important, to look at the humanity of another human being. And I think that that's something, I'm not going to get political. I'm not going to go there. But right after our last president was elected, someone posted on Facebook, what would you say to him if you were given the opportunity? And of course, everybody had all these negative things to say. And I said, my question would be, who wounded you so deeply that it's taken over your very being? I don't see happiness with him. I don't see those moments of happiness with his children, happiness with the people and perhaps he is a happy person, but from where I sit, I try to look for the humanity in every person. I want to go back again to, and you talk about this in the book, that first time that you were sitting in a theater, watching a role, a play unfold on stage, and that light that went off within you, that you said, that's what I'm going to do with my life.
Yes, I was 5 years old. I saw that Gary Cooper, Paulette Goddard movie, Western. I can never remember the name of it, but I remember them. And I remember Hudson's story. And I said to myself, never seen anything like it. It was like magic. And it was a story. And I said to myself, I want to tell stories. I want to be a person that tells these wonderful stories. To me, it was like magical, wonderful story that transported me to another world. The Western, I love Western spears, but he transported me. I thought, I want to do that. I want to tell these stories, and that never left me. Later on in high school and stuff, people made fun of me because you can't be an actress. But you know what? And it's very hurtful when people put down your dream. I never put down anybody's dream, no matter how outlandish it may be. Go for it in whatever way you can go for it. You'll materialize it in some way. Maybe not the whole enchilada, but maybe a piece of it. Maybe that'll be enough. But I know what you're saying. Rather than look for someone and criticize them and say, what a terrible person. See, what your attitude is great. What wounded that person? What hurt? What happened in their lives that caused that is much more interesting than, oh, he's a bump. He's a so.
Mm-hmm.
That is boring. That is so boring. But it takes a lot of insight to say, like you did, wow, what happened? What happened to this person? What kind of love didn't get? How was he wounded? Is much more interesting, and it's much more imaginative because you can find little things and say maybe here, maybe here, maybe here. But that makes it human rather than calling somebody names or calling this or saying you're stupid or you don't know what you're doing or he's this or he's that. That's not interesting to me. That's just banal to me. Anybody can do that. Mm-hmm. But what you did is much more profound and much more interesting.
Thank you. So there you are in Flagstaff, Arizona. And you have, as most actors, actresses, artists, there's a fork in the road. One is Hollywood. The other is New York. You chose New York. Why New York?
Well, at that time, this was the late 60s, all the great acting teachers were in New York. Bella Adler, Sandy Meisner, Lee Strasberg, all these people. And what I see, instead of what kids do today is they say, I want to be famous. I want to be famous. I said to myself, I want to be good. I want to be really, really good. I want to study with all these great people so I can learn what they know. I want to be good. So I started out with Lee, then I went to Sandy, then I went to Stella. Then I found my greatest teacher, which she wasn't that well known, Barbara Loden. She was a great actress, wonderful, probably the best actress I've ever seen. And then later she died, then very young, big loss for me, still personally. And then I went to her teacher, Paul Mann. And then I said, oh, Paul, because Paul taught the way Barbara taught, because they were the teacher student. And I remember, this is interesting. I remember one day thinking, oh, Paul is only 72. I love Paul. So he's 70. He's good for another 10 years. Oh, wow, wonderful. I get 10 more years of Paul to really perfect my art. And then, of course, the next day he dropped dead. And you go, no. No, how can that happen? How can that be? So I was such a shock because then you can't count on life. You can't count on those 10 years. You can't. So in a way, it's made me stronger to do the movie. That I thought, oh no, well, you can't do this. You can't. You don't have $100,000. You don't have $200,000 to make a movie. You don't have all these things. And I thought to myself, no, I don't have all those things, but I have some money saved, which I used all of it. And then I started the Indiegogo thing, but we're about halfway there. And I thought, okay, that's good. This is good. People are rallying. This is all good. And so you just go one little step at a time, and you just really kind of just pray, I guess, get along the way. You just
absolutely. Well, in terms of making the journey to New York to study with the great teachers, and you even had a relationship, it's in the book, with Lee Strasberg.
I did, yeah.
When you say that you almost choked on your escargot at Sardi's when he proposed to you, the imagery is all there, everyone. But I want to ask you, when you came to New York, what were you looking for in a teacher?
I didn't know what I wanted because I didn't know. I mean, I had a little high school teacher and a college teacher, but they were fine. They weren't, but they didn't get to what I wanted or needed and process. So my search in New York through the teachers was, I learned a little bit from each teacher, each of the three early teachers, and I learned a lot more from Barbara. And let me just hang up so we don't get that phone. I don't know how to turn it off. I'm so bad technically, but I'll just keep doing that.
Somebody's trying to reach us.
We reach it. So I, when all of a sudden, and that's why I say sometimes a famous teacher, if you don't feel like you've been fed somehow, or if you don't resonate with that person, don't be afraid to leave and walk away. Don't be afraid to go to somebody. You will know when your soul goes, oh my God, wow, I'm learning something. And sometimes people like Robert De Niro studied with a teacher that I don't even remember his name. He was so unknown. And sometimes if you find that person that resonates with you somehow and moves you, and you have this understanding. Barbra said the first year when I studied with her, she said, "Now you're gonna sit here and you're gonna listen to me say things in different ways, and you're gonna understand it up here, but you're not going to. It's not going to go into your nervous system, and you'll get it. But it takes time. You don't get it like this. You don't get it instantly." I mean, maybe somebody, a miracle that wise does, I don't know. But I sat there, and almost 9 months later, all of a sudden, I realized a lot of what she was talking about. And it just went into, it embodied me. So it takes time, and sometimes it's not the famous teachers. Like Sandy, when I got him, he was such a legend. But when I got him in that year, that I was with him, he was the meanest, nastiest, horrible man. And my scene partner was a guy named Jerry Lanning. He was the nephew in Auntie May.
Yes, I know him. I know him well.
He's a lovely man. And you can talk to Jerry. Until Jerry, I lost his phone number. So he should give me I put in a piece of paper. We're in a bus in the winter a couple of years ago. And he's sitting in the back, and I'm sitting here. And he said, "Rutanya?" And I said, "Oh my God, Jerry Lanning, I haven't seen you since Sandy Meisner days." And then I sat next to him. I said, "Remember when we shook together in Sandy Meisner's class?" Because Sandy would always pick one person to really pick on that whole class.
Isn't it funny that there are teachers that do that? I've worked with some directors who were the same way. I was in a show years ago with a director who just had it in for me. And someone said, "Don't take it personally. You're the whipping boy for this production."
That's right. So Sandy always had a whipping boy. And it was painful to go in because you don't know that day you were going to be the whipping boy. So you sat there and you don't know if halfway through he's going to pick another whipping boy. And that's why I said to Jerry, I said, "Remember when we shook together and laughed and laughed?" And that moment came right back. we took our hands again, because we took our hands in class sometimes and just hold our hands, and their hands shook together.
Now, there are some teachers who want you to go out and pursue a career, start auditioning right away. And then there are some that don't. They want you to absorb as much as you possibly can in the classes, in the workshops before you move on. Did your teachers at that time encourage you to start pursuing your career? Or what was the vibe that you were getting when you first arrived in New York?
Well, with Lee, it was so interesting looking back. I was so young. I was 20 years old. Nobody understood in my class what he was talking about. I was in the private classes, which were held in Carnegie Hall. So there's about 24 of us. And everybody was too scared to really ask Lee things, because I remember when there was a cafe shop across the street, 57th, and drugstore cafe, 57th and 7th, no longer there. We'd all go, all the actors would go over and we'd talk. And I said, what did he mean when he said that? I don't know. What did he mean when he said that? I don't know. Everybody's terrified of Lee. So later on, I did, he taught me really few key things, which was, first of all, the movie screen is, 36 feet long. So you don't go like this. So you kind of have to moderate things for the film thing.
Well, let me ask you, excuse me for interrupting, but that fear that he instilled in his students, do you think that helped? Or did
no, it didn't help. It did not help. I don't think it helped at all. I think anytime a teacher instills fear in you or control over you, run. I don't care if you go to some person that has, like Bobby did, that has no name, so to speak, but somebody that you can trust is so important. because otherwise you're constantly worrying about that, what director will think and think and think. And the same thing with Sandy. So all these great big teachers, and Stella was hated women, except if you were a star like Pamela Tiff. I used to come in. Pamela was big at the time. But there's a lot of women that she did not help at all. Men she loved men. But I liked watching her. I'm ashamed to say I liked watching her when she took over. This is a terrible thing. She dragged a guy off. You're not doing this right. We noticed she would say, "You're not doing this right." Very, very, very royal kind of. And then she would take his part, and she would do it so good. She's great. But she would do it by yanking the student off the year I was there. Mm-hmm. She would do that student's part for him. And that was fascinating. I really enjoyed that, even though it was terrifying for the student. And the other class she had was the script analysis class, which was absolutely great. But she would only do the men's parts. Like in Death of a Salesman, she script analyzed Death of a Salesman. Great. I have notes on it somewhere. They were great notes. But she'd only do Willie and the Son. She would not do the wife. Interesting, isn't it?
But you learned a lot from observing.
Yeah. That was my best class with her, because she did a script analysis and she acted out all the parts. She was terrific.
Now, I know that you did all of the odd jobs, the survival jobs that people have when they come to New York. When did you feel that you were starting to really get your feet, planted as a New Yorker? Because either you become a New Yorker, I feel, right away, or you don't. And for me, I felt from the moment I arrived in New York that this is where I belonged.
Me too. I love the city. I love the anonymity of the city.
Can you describe to everyone what the New York was of the 60s when you arrived here, the vibe in New York, what it was like to audition at that time? You did everything. I mean, you did voiceover work. You voice double work, I should say. You worked as a standby for a few other stars and everything. You did everything to pay your dues. Can you talk about the vibe for everyone of what that time frame was like for you personally?
Well, I came in the 60s, the mid-60s, and I've never been to a place like this in New York before. It was full of all kinds of excitement. The Village had music. There was off-Broadway. I was so poor, Richard. I was so poor. I didn't have any money. I came to New York with $200 and $150 when went for rent and utilities.
I came with $500 in 1979.
There you go. That's $200 in 1955. That's the same amount of money. And so I had to get work immediately. And I had all these drug jobs because my mother wasn't going to send me a dime. I had nobody to rely on. There was nobody I could call and say, "Please help me. Can you send me rent money?" There was nobody. It was just, that was it. So I didn't know Popeye's here. That's why he's going to come up. You probably see him in a minute. So for me, it was just at that point survival and making enough money to pay the rent and making enough money to pay for my classes. And I had very little left over. So I would get, now what say, because I would work until 4 a.m. on the bar near Lincoln Center. And then I'd take the subway home. I'd get home by 5. Then I would sleep from 5 till 10:30. And I would get out at 11. This is the days when you could make rounds. I would make rounds from 10:30 to like 4:30, have a little something to eat, and then go to work. There's Popeye coming across. And so, but for me, it was so exciting because I felt like I knew a lot of actors. I started to know a lot of actors in my class, and felt like I was in an atmosphere of people that were creative and people were struggling, people were wanting to know, some people were writing. And so, I mean, I went to a dinner my friend Joanne had Leonard Melfi was there, and I talked to him. And I mean, I was really just struggling. I was struggling. Now, the late 60s was my big breakthrough. Mm-hmm. because I did Brian De Palma's film Greetings, which won the Berlin Film Festival Silver Award at the Berlin Festival that year, and starred Robert De Niro. And so Bobby and I became friends, and then we did the sequel to Greetings called Hi Mom, which is another Brian De Palma film. And that rose him. Well, that didn't rise him stardom. That was Godfather, but it started his career. He did that film with Martin Scorsese. Was that early film with I forgot the name of it. Martin Scorsese's early film. So you guys out there will know. And so then from there he catapulted really eventually to Godfather. It was a great film, wonderful. But so that was the 60s when you could shoot a movie like Brian did for $35,000 on short ends. People don't know what short ends are. Short ends were this is when people had film. They had the leftover film of 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, no longer than that. And they would sell them like Brian to movie makers. So he would say to me, okay, you have 6 minutes to do this scene, because it was all improvised. And so in Greetings, when the camera runs out, the camera really does run out. But the scene was so good, Brian said, let's put in another 4 minutes, but you got to finish it in 4 minutes. So it was a process that people don't do that anymore. People don't steal shots. We shot the bookstore shot at 5 a.m. We'd be on location because Brian's friend was the manager, but we had to get out by 7. So we had like 2 hours to set up and shoot the film. One take. That's it. One take. Nothing, no more than one take. So this energy. There's this kinetic kind of energy in the air about these independent films. And I didn't have an agent. How I got Brian De Palma's film to get in on Greetings is I ran into a friend of mine that did background work with me. And he said, Rutanya, there's this guy casting for people that do improv. I know you do improv. So go down. He's right around the corner. I just came from there. So I go in. I go in. I show up. Today, you can't do that. The guard would kick you out.
But one story that you tell in your book that I really love, you were working on a film, and a leading actor said, give the close-up to him. And then you, years later, were able to do the same thing for another actor. And because for me, it's all about paying it forward. And I thought, what a wonderful opportunity to be able to do. And there are very few in this business, and you know what I'm talking about, who would do something like that.
That was John Wayne.
Yes.
I was doing a movie with Sam Peckinpah in Durango, Mexico. And I became friends with Michael Wayne because we were all in the same place at the same one restaurant. And so he said, why don't you come out and visit our set on your day off? I said, okay, thank you, I will. And so he sent a limo for me. And I went and drove out an hour to John Wayne's set. And here is this man. Here's my dialogue. I made myself scared on the way out. Oh my God, John Wayne is such a white ringer. He's going to ask me where I was born. I was born in Riga, Latvia. Isn't that a communist country? Aren't you part of it? No, you're a commie. Get out of my set. This is my.
You were thinking that as you were on your way to meet him.
I get out of the car and I'm a little shaky because here comes Mr. Wayne. This presence. I'm telling you, the man had presence. Comes toward me and he says, "Hi, my name is John Wayne. I hear you're a friend of my son's." "Oh, yes, Mr. Wayne, I'm so happy to meet you." "Well, come on over here. I was very thin. You look kind of hungry. Come here, kid." He takes me over personally, makes sure I get the food. Then he makes fun of my clogs. He says, "What are those darn things you're wearing?" I said, "They're the same as your cowboy boots, but they're shaped differently." Oh, he laughed. Then he takes me personally and shows me around. And then he said, "We're going to be shooting over there. If you need anything, let me know." Well, never in my whole life, never. So I'm using this opportunity watching him film. So on one of the shots, there's like 2 or 3 young actors, like in their 20s, have small parts, and there's a scene with him. And all of a sudden he does his scene, he points to the director and says, "Give them the close-ups." He walks away to his chess. He liked playing chess. He always had hired a person to play chess with him. Sort of thing. I said, that impacted so much. And I said to myself right then and there, if I ever get in that position, if I ever have that opportunity, I will do what Mr. Wayne just did. So in Amityville 2, here I am one of the stars of Amityville 2. They have Danny Aiello Jr.'s son. He's a stuntman, mainly. It's like his first acting part. So he's the bug man that goes into the cellar and checks for the bugs infestation. And then he comes back and he says to me, "Oh, you bugs," something about. And I see they're shooting in from behind. And I'm in a lot of the shots. And I mean, I don't need to steal one more scene. So I say to Damiano, walk over to Damiano, the director, and I said, "Damiano, give him the close-up." He said, "Rutanya, are you sure?" Give him the close-up. That made me feel so good. I felt so
It
good.
made you feel wonderful. You flew home that night.
You know, well, I did it. I did it again in Toronto when I was shooting a movie with Frederick Forrest, Brittany Murphy, and her mother. It was called, and it changed the name on it. I don't know if it was called. It was a CBS movie of the week. And when the policeman, Canadian actor, 2 or 3 lines, he comes to tell me that my daughter is going in the doorway. It's a very emotional scene. So I couldn't give him the close-up because it wouldn't work. But I said, I took him by the shoulders and I said, "Here, you turn this way, then they'll see your profile in the camera." So I got why see his back? You're going to see his face, part of it anyway. So I did that. And I'm sorry I haven't had more opportunity to do that. Because
there'll be more. There'll be more. But I mean, one of the things, again, as I said, there are so many themes in your book that we see the dark side of celebrity as well in graphic detail, but you also see, John Wayne being a perfect gentleman. Here he is, the biggest star in Hollywood at that time, and he treated you as an equal, not as just another fan showing up on the set. And then and we're going to get to him in a few minutes later. You had a similar experience the first meeting Frank Perry and going into his office and, him being a perfect gentleman with you. I want to talk about some of the elements of the book and you, and I want to approach Mommie Dearest from a different angle than most of your interviewers have done, with all due respect to all of them. And I want to start, first of all, with Joan Crawford. You had the experience of meeting her or seeing her twice before you got the opportunity to do Mommie Dearest. Can you talk about both of those experiences?
Well, they were filming Johnny Qajar, which was in Sedona. It was about 20 miles south. And a lot of times I'd go into Sedona for the weekends. But my stepfather was a photographer. He had a little photo studio. So whenever people were shooting, he would always go with his camera, and he got some great shots of movie stars. And I would take my brownie box camera. I got some great shots of Alan Ladd, who was so nice too. And then they were shooting Johnny Guitar. And my friend Bob Bradshaw's Western Town, it burned down. He's no longer alive. Wonderful, wonderful man, real cowboy. And so Bob would always let us know when his movie, and he'd always let us know where it was. And so I saw her, maybe about 10 feet away. It was close. And now I look back, and I think the other actress was Mercedes McCambridge and Scott Brady. And I looked at her. She was a very powerful woman. She was powerful. There's no doubt about it.
Especially in that movie.
and that's one of the reasons I didn't approach her like I approached Alan Ladd or some other Joel McRae or somebody that was shooting, because I felt like somehow I was going to intrude even though they weren't shooting. It was like I didn't sense that it wasn't going to be a good experience. So, but I was sure for maybe a good half hour, and then they started shooting and moved away. But she was really, now the second time was really interesting, because now this is not known by very many people.
Unless they read the book.
It's in the book. If you read the book, you'll know it. You'll know it all. Oh,
Yes.
you know everything. I was doing stand-in and photo doubling for Mia Farrow. Very nice woman. And Roman was very passionate about this movie. I mean, he was almost micromanaging sometimes. He'd take things, do it for them. It was almost like Stella. He would do it for them. But, it was exciting. And Bill Fraker was the cameraman on that. What a gentleman. And he looked like a director, Bill Fraker. He had this wonderful suede leather jacket. He had this perfectly trimmed white beard. He was handsome and very nice. And so one night we're shooting down in the village at that little theater, was playing that forever musical.
The Fantastics.
The Fantastics. It went on for like 20 years. So they rented that theater because in the scene, Mia Farrow goes to the theater with her friend. That scene is cut, by the way. And in the lobby, she meets Van Johnson and Joan Crawford. Now, they were both big friends of Bill Castle, who was producing the movie. So Bill wanted them in the movie just at the lobby so Mia and her friend could say, oh, like, Joan Crawford, blah, blah, blah. And Mia was late. So held up in traffic or something. Almost an hour. And Roman was beside himself. Where are they? Time. And it was time. It was night shooting. And so he said, Rutanya, get in Mia's coat, the white coat, and I'll just shoot you from behind. Because my hair was done the same way. I'll just shoot you from behind, and then you go in the theater by yourself. And then when Mia arrives, and I'll do the intro shots. So I go, Roman shoots me, I go in, couple of shot takes. And then I'm standing, I go in the lobby, and there I see Joan Crawford standing there with her beautifully kind of tiger pattern hat and dress. And I said, oh my God, that is Joan Crawford. Well, she must think I'm Mia Farrow, because I don't think she would come over to me otherwise, because I'm being shot in Mia Farrow's hair, makeup, and clothes. And then she comes over to me in her white gloved hand, and she says, hello, I'm Joan Crawford. I was so stunned. I probably was mute for a couple of seconds. It's very nice meeting you. Oh, Miss Crawford, it's lovely meeting you too. Then she walks back to her spot where the cereals. And I thought, oh my God, Joan Crawford just said hello to me. Mia stand-in, yes, obviously. But I didn't let on the best I could. And then about 15 minutes later, Mia came. We went outside, changed clothes, and she came in and she did the scene with. But what happened is during the break is Van Johnson thinks Bill Fraker is the director, or otherwise he thinks he's director, or he knows him, one of the two. And he says, and I overhear this, I'm standing right there next to Bill. And Roman is about 2 feet away. I've got to say, Roman has perfect hearing. I don't know if I would have heard this. But Van Johnson looks at he has Polanski has a big nose. That's just big nose. There's no way around it. So Van Johnson says to Bill Fraker, who's that? Pinocchio? Well, Roman exploded. Get off my set! Get off my set! Off! And he kicks Van Johnson and Joan Crawford off the set. And Joan Crawford turns around to him and says, you should learn to be a gentleman like Mr. William Castle. And she walks off. There I was in the middle of all this mini drama.
Now, I want to ask you a question from your, thank you for sharing that. From your perspective, a few years ago, and I'm going to share this photograph here, I interviewed Christina. And this was when she did the show. You were actually there. We saw each other that night at the Snapple Theater. But her publicist brought in to interview her. And I asked her about the film and the book. And because I wanted to make the interview about her, just as I want to make this interview about you. And I asked her if she felt that the movie hurt her cause or helped her cause. And she said to me, and it's always resonated with me, that the book is told through the eyes of an abused child. The movie is told through the eyes of a movie star with a lot of excess. And I know that you did and we're going to get to how it all happened, but you did a lot of research on Joan Crawford. There's another episode where you met Joan Crawford, and that was her handprints in front of Grauman's Chinese Theater. When you placed your handprints and chills went through your body because it fit so perfectly. What are your overall thoughts? It's been a few years since the movie, in how Joan Crawford's legacy is today.
Well, personally, I think I really admire Joan Crawford in a lot of ways. And one of them is, she went, I think, adopted the kids when her career was at the top, but starting to go down. And I think in that era, from all the things that I've read, she was struggling to stay on top, being dumped by MGM, never knowing. And I think what happens, because she was beloved by all the people that worked with her. I worked with several people that worked with, including the woman, Vivian Walker, on Mommie Dearest, who did like 5 movies with her. They loved her. She was so considerate. She sent everybody gifts. She remembered everybody's birthdays. She needed people to love her. I think because in her life, she was so desperate and unloved and so vilified in a way for her poverty and made fun of. I think she had a tremendously painful childhood. I can relate to it. And I think the fact that she really literally pulled herself up by her bootstraps, whether or not she did semi-porn pictures or not, I don't care. She had to do what she had to do to survive. When she got her break, I think she was so terrified of losing her status, which she was a huge movie star, and that I think there was no outlet for her sometimes to scream or yell at people. Or she had to be this wonderful person, which she had that image. So my opinion is that when she went home, she just had to let all this go. And I think what happened is, unfortunately, sometimes the children became the target of her frustration. The children became the target of her trying to control her life, her career, her life. She felt it was falling apart. And the only safe people she had to let down on her kids. Maybe some other people that were maybe Gardner or some, who knows, but mainly the kids, because there she could be safe. And I think she yo-yoed between. I'm sure she was nice a lot of the times. The kids were well fed and well taken care of. They weren't neglected. And but like kids don't understand at the time that when you're strict and you tell somebody you've got to do this, I've got to look good, you got to pick up your room, you got to, because people come into the house and you can't be a normal kid that gets dirty. You're my child of movie star. So I think there's this juggling, and I have to remember the humanity. I think she loosened up a lot later in life when she retired and came to New York. Somebody came in. She said she wasn't so fanatic about her white carpets anymore. She wasn't. But then on the other hand, you have the kids, and the kids didn't understand what was going on. It would have probably been better. I don't know if the time they did that, they would have been in therapy. That would have been a great thing.
Well, there are a couple of questions I want to ask before we do run out of time. And one, specifically, is the process of this book. You chronicled in amazing detail the ups, the downs, the in-betweens of this film. It wasn't all, always. Faye Dunaway had her good days and she had her bad days. One of those didn't always balance out. But you chronicle this film so specifically. I'm just wondering if you've done this with the other films that you worked on.
No, I didn't. And now I look back and I wish I had, because there's some good stories. But, unless you chronicle them, it's pretty hard to remember them years later. It's just hard. What I did was I knew I was having a really hard time maintaining my equilibrium because of the things that sometimes Faye did, or mostly Faye. But,
and your personal life as well.
Yeah, and along with that, what is that, tumultuous.
Tumultuous.
I mean, between the two of them, I thought, I'm not going to survive this. My husband is shooting up heroin, spending my money. Faye is yelling and screaming about something. But a lot of times she was very nice, to me anyway, not to a lot of other people. But and I thought, between these two things, I'm being squeezed. I don't know if I'm going to make it. I really didn't know if I was going to make it, especially trying to do my character as a character that is stable, that is down to earth, that keeps everything balanced. I was so unbalanced. I said, the only thing I can do, I thought, when I started journaling it, I kind of balanced my life, and not that it made it any better, but it was in balance. It was like an equilibrium. It was like therapy with my pen and pencil. And so that's why I did this, because I've never felt ever so challenged or imbalanced on a set ever.
Well, I love the fact that Frank Perry, the director, also reached out to you and at the very beginning asked you to find those elements in the script in which the story seemed to change. I love the story that you tell in the book where, and all I'm going to say is his response to you was, let's keep it that aspect in the closet. Read the book to find out what we're talking about. But it really, I felt reading your description of that aspect of her really summed up Carol Ann as to who she was. And I think that the things that you described that she would do, although we don't see them on screen, now when I watch the film, I will pick up those elements of this. You kept these journals for your own sanity.
Yes.
And then years later, the film opens. And again, everyone read the book, because I'm not skipping over this for any reasons except that we're going to run out of time. In the book, you talk about, the film opened, and all of a sudden, at screenings, unusual things start to happen. There's a whole different visceral response to the film than what anyone connected to the film anticipated it would be. Some embraced that. Some did not. You chose to embrace it. And you went out, is it Mark Eustace?
Yes, Mark Eustace.
Yes. Who did the screening at the Castro in San Francisco. And you went out there and all of a sudden you are a superstar.
I was shocked. It was probably the most wonderful experience in terms of these, 1,800 men, these wonderful, this wave of love kept, I was like, I could have melted. It was such a great experience. I had never done a talk on Mommie Dearest before. It was my first one. Mm-hmm. And so I had no idea what to expect. And from the very first moment, I've never, ever experienced this kind of reception and this kind of powerful, loving embrace of me. That I'll always remember that. I'll always remember that moment. It was like a breathless moment, like just breathing it in, and I'll never forget it. It was a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. It was just remarkable. So glad Mark asked.
Well, one other thing that I want to bring up before we have to wrap this up, and I could go on for 3 days with you. I've enjoyed this so much, but I'm respectful of your time as well, and everyone who's watching. But you are so brutally honest in your book with your own experiences, your personal experiences. When the book was ready to go to the publisher, were there aspects of your life that you said, I don't really feel comfortable sharing that? Or did you just decide to let go? Maybe there are aspects that we don't know that are not in the book. How did you choose what to share with the world and what to keep private?
I said to myself, if I write this book, I can't write one of those people write, they call ghostwriters. It always, they're good, but it always doesn't get to me. So I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do it. Now, I didn't put as much into my first chapter as I'm putting into my movie, but it's the same theme. So I had more time to explore it. When I went to, I had an agent I want to name him because it turned out to be a horrible experience with this book. So he waited like a year, piddling, paddling, poor guy. I feel sorry for him. But I had to leave, and so I self-published basically through Kindle. And so I said, let me just publish it. If there's some edit. My friend, dear friend Ben, he's so sweet. He said, Rutanya, did you notice a couple of grammatical errors in your book? This is like last year. He's like, I said, oh, Ben, I said, I know there are. And I'm not going to worry about it.
But they're yours. They're yours. Own them.
So I'm not going to.
Oh, God. I love you. I could go on for 3 days with you. Will you come back another time?
Absolutely, I'll come back.
When your film is over and everything, I want you to come back and we'll talk about the film. I want to thank everybody for being here today. If you enjoyed the show, and I hope that you all did, please, please, please subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Yes, absolutely. You'll feel good. Richard shows uplift you. You know we're happy. Choose happiness. Choose Richard.
I love you for that. But I want to let everyone know, please subscribe if you can. Leave a comment on YouTube and hit the like button if you like today's show, because that increases the ranking. And all of you
comments, hit the like button. Help Richard. Yes.
All of those who are lucky to be here right now, you saw the interview, but this will share it with other people as well. And also tomorrow night, if you are around at 7 o'clock, I'm going to be celebrating the cabaret entertainer, Carter Calvert. I love her. I'm so excited about her.
Watch her in. She's wonderful.
Please, do you know her?
No, but I've heard of her. I heard her.
She is absolutely incredible. And so, and she's going to be doing a live stream on Friday night. So we're going to be talking about the experience of taking COVID to a whole new level with our art and our creativity. I always end my shows by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. This is what I want you to do. Go to Amazon.com. Order 2 copies of the Mommie Dearest Diary. Keep one for yourself. It's a great read. And then send one to your 6th friend on Facebook, the 6th name that pops up. Send them the book and just say, I'm letting you know that you matter in my life. It's great. There are so many other stories that we didn't even touch upon today, but I wanted this to be an appetizer. Read the book. Now, I always end the show by telling everyone, as my dear friend David Friedman says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And you don't know what somebody else is going through right now. We talked about it earlier in the show. Have empathy for our friends, our family, our fellow artists. Just be nice. And if you can't be nice, move on or write a book about it. I love you so much. I'm going to give you the final word. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about that you want to expound upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone who's watching now. And Rutanya, thank you for the gifts that you've given to the world and that you will continue to give.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant work you've done. Thank you.
I usually don't promo myself, but if you have a few bucks to spend, I don't care how little or how much, you're going to get a credit at the end of my movie. So you go to my site on Facebook or go to Indiegogo.com. I'm raising funds. I've got enough funds to get the movie edited. But then, there's always little post-production things. So that's support a story that is about humanity, about children, and about wars and what happens. But there's some humor in it, too.
And I'll post it on my page as well. So send me all the details, and we'll keep it going.
Okay, honey. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a great night. Love you.
Bye-bye. You too, Richard.
Thank you so much.